welcome to our program World Today. I'm your host Sharmeen Ali. On today's program, we're going to be talking about certain developments in the recent days that we've seen. First of all, Prime Minister Imran Khan has reached out to the leaders of France and Jordan and brought them current to the situation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And he's told them about the atrocities being done against the people of occupied Kashmir, as well as the risk of a confrontation between the two neighboring countries, India and Pakistan. Now, Prime Minister Imran Khan has been making this effort continuously ever since Article 370 and 35A was revoked by the Indian Parliament. And there's been gross human rights violations in that part of India, in Indian occupied Kashmir, where there's been a curfew now for over 3 weeks. And people are being detained, tortured, pellet gun use has been in excess. Prime Minister Imran Khan has said that he's going to be the ambassador for the Kashmiris around the world, and he's sticking to his promise. He's speaking about this. He spoke to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman recently as well, and he reached out to the leaders of Turkey, Malaysia, and China as well. So he's been working relentlessly, and he has told the nation in his speech that he will also be speaking about it at the UN General Assembly. So we will be speaking about that in our program today. Also, the Prime Minister has asked the public to come out at noon tomorrow and show solidarity with the Kashmiri cause, and to come out of their homes and offices and schools at 12 noon tomorrow to show unity on this matter as a nation. So in other developments, the Foreign Office has also asked the government in Kabul to curb terrorist hideouts along the border in Afghanistan, which are frequently carrying out attacks across the border into Pakistan territory, which has cost the lives of several of our soldiers. And the Foreign Office spokesman said that as a matter of policy, Pakistan does not fire across Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and cross-border attacks by terrorists on the army and frontier FC posts are responded to in self-defense only. And he also said that Pakistan regrets the Afghan government's twisting of facts about recent incidents of firing along the Pakistan and Afghanistan border. So these are recent developments in that regard, because there's a peace process about to take place, which will be concluded pretty soon, which Pakistan is very active in with the United States, and bringing the United States and the Taliban together on one table. So we'll be discussing this matter as well with our guest. And also, the Prime Minister has directed the Board of Investment to take necessary steps to improve the regulatory framework, to improve the ease of doing business for the business community in Pakistan, and also to attract much needed foreign investment in the country. So these are the topics that we'll be discussing today. Let's meet our guest for today's program. We have with us Mr. Rana Athar Javed, who's the Director General of Pakistan House, which is a think tank. And we also have with us Dr. Rizwan, who's a senior analyst. Thank you both for being with us today on our program. Rana Athar Javed, I'd like to start with you first. Now, Prime Minister Imran Khan has spoken to President Emmanuel Macron, and he's also spoken to the King of Jordan as well, King Abdullah. And now the usual response that he's getting from these leaders is that we are watching and monitoring this situation closely. And that seems to be about it. That's what the Jordanian leader said to him, and so did President Macron. So these awareness-raising measures that the Prime Minister is taking with foreign leaders, how effective do you think they will be in the long term? And collectively, how big of an impact do you feel that they will make?
Thank you very much, actually. I think it's... If we said because you already said it's in the long term. First of all, let's come back to the short term. The short term is that, as the Prime Minister said since this happened 3 weeks ago in his different speeches and the last speech to the nation, that he will be the ambassador. He is ambassador, working on behalf of Kashmiri people and their rights. The most important element is to continuity at a sustainable pace, in order to ensure the Kashmiri people and Pakistanis and Muslims around the world that Pakistan actually absolutely will never give up on Kashmiris. This is number one. Number two is about internationalizing it. And it came just as a coincidence that there was G7 conference in France, Paris, and where everyone was giving all kind of similar statements. Emmanuel Macron said also that they're concerned. So as you know, both leaders, if you said one-liner, this is the diplomatic basic language used in order to able to, in order to, to operate behind the scene, because most of the diplomats or these world leaders, they cannot say categorically that we will condemn this and that because of interstate relationship. We have to understand that the diplomacy is not about imposing, as India is doing, contrary to what we are doing. India has committed complete, violation of international law, but at the same time, India is imposing its solution on the outside world. We are not doing that. What we are asking is to go back to the United Nations, A, UNSC, and B, whichever agreement was there and whatever we were discussing bilaterally, it has been suspended by India. So it's an extreme action. So I would say primarily that reaching out to the world leaders by the Prime Minister at this time and in the coming times is very crucial. Simply because you cannot let it just mute.
Right.
This is a time for us because it happened so. If you go back on 3rd of August, 1st of August, read all the newspapers and electronic media, you will not find a single news item about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
not really in terms of what's happening now. What's happening now is the BBC, Al Jazeera, and all these RT, International Channel, New York Times, Washington Post, they're writing immensely on it from different angles. They're asking questions that why India has taken hostage of 8 million. I'm not saying exactly this term, but absolutely the crux of the matter is that India has violated international law and subjugated and taken hostage 8 million people. Their voice cannot be heard. It's complete breakdown of communication, complete blackout of everything, suspension of food and supply, medicine. This has to be said. And the Pakistan has taken the lead. And we see that maybe there are a lot of criticism that they cannot see the results apparently. But the results of these kind of things cannot come like this because we are up against a very fascist ideology, like, literally, I would say, it's factually correct that the Nazi ideology was similar because they also created these chambers, segregated people, the Jews, and then they cleansed them. And obviously, 4,000 almost, some reports, credible reports say the 4,000 youth has been disappeared, taken to mainland Indian jails.
Absolutely.
And these things have to be communicated. It's good that the Prime Minister should take the lead, and Pakistan must continue every single day to communicate to the world leaders, be it the Western European, African leaders, South American, tell them their story. Because if you remember, the Holocaust was told over a number of years. That's how people...
And repeatedly, the movies being made about it.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you say it. You have to say it. And I know people think that why we are doing the same thing again and again. Well, we are up against the very deaf ear of India.
Exactly. And one of the issues, Dr. Rizwan, is that if we don't raise so much awareness about what happens in Kashmir and we just let it go, then there's no stopping India because the whole Hindutva ideology and the Akhand Bharat and all, it encompasses the entire region. So the entire South Asian region is not safe from this type of an expansionist ideology, fascist ideology, as Rana Sahab just said. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, in my viewpoint, as Rana Sahab already mentioned so many things about the Kashmir issue, Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, they have launched a very smart campaign. That's international campaign. They are highlighting issues, and the most important, you just mentioned it, Prime Minister Imran Khan phoned to Emmanuel Macron, then he phoned to King Abdullah of Jordan second. So what is the reason behind? If we look at that, India enjoys better relations with France than Pakistan. Same is with Jordan. If India's, the allies countries who are having trade with India, strategic relations with India, who are sharing sensitive technology with India, they do not know what is the real face of India. So how would they be continuing with that? So Imran Khan, he found and aware them what is happening in Kashmir. People for last more than 20 days are starving. They don't have access to medication. They don't have access to even, this is against the fundamental human rights and against the United Nations Charter of Human Rights. Why the international community is not so much coming into action? You are right, Rana Sahab, because there are diplomatic, etiquettes First, they are looking at the issue. We are putting our unrelenting efforts to highlight the issue. Now, when they know about it, the reaction definitely comes. United Nations Security Council resolution is the evidence that we have been successful in internationalizing this issue. Secondly, I would like to say that when Abu Ghraib jail, when George W. Bush, he was putting prisoners there, there was prisoners abuse. International community, when they knew about it, what is happening behind those cells, torture cells. So they Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, they highlight the issue, and United States had to retreat from that. The same is with India now. Prime Minister Modi went, he got award from UAE. There is so much disappointment in international community and Pakistanis and Muslim Ummah in general. There are sentiments about it. Prime Minister Modi was not supposed to be given this award because he has a bad history of bloodshed, starting from Gujarat till now today on Kashmiris. Now the second thing is that after going at G7 summit, he was invited telephonically by Emmanuel Macron. This is pretty smart move that Prime Minister Imran Khan phoned Emmanuel Macron that he is the person who is the bad guy because he is what he is doing the innocent Kashmiri people. You know, some of the things like I would like to highlight in your program. The stone pelters, they have made this issue internationalized. I saw many people who were talking in the streets around people, they were saying they should pick up the weapons. There's an option for the Kashmiris because you cannot suppress them till their death. They have right to rise against the oppression.
Yes.
So the stone pelters I was talking, that is also, that is a soft, their image is going internationally. Highlighting such things that these are innocent Kashmiri, they have not picked weapons against the Indians, and Indian forces are committing brutalities against them. This is totally unjustified. No law, even India's own law, India's own constitution does not allow this.
Right.
And you know there are moves, civil society is in action, and their own politicians. I would like to name Professor Manoj Kumar, and after Shashi Tharoor, the civil society, Arundhati Roy. These are the voices internationally. They are highlighting Modi's black moves. And what is now the next for Pakistan? Not only talking to Emmanuel Macron and King Abdullah II, Pakistan should put this move in the whole Middle East where India's investment, India's stakes, India's strategic supplies coming from. Pakistan should also highlight on the international forum, NSG, India is going to get the membership of Nuclear Suppliers Group. It's a candidate for that. At that level, and above all, India is seeking permanent membership to United Nations Security Council with veto power. That is another option. Pakistan, if makes this very much clear upon all these P5 permanent members of 5 of United Nations Security Council, I believe that there would be a diplomatic action against India. And Indians now, Indian economy is already on the downfall. And over the next 2, 3, 4 years, you will see what is happening in India. Lastly, I would say that the fascist ideology, as Rana Sahib, you were talking, this is a threat. They possess nuclear weapons. I still remember many think tanks from United States, Washington DC, London-based think tanks were saying Pakistan weapons are not secure. They were raising voices, and we proved our weapons are in safe hands. They enjoy complete safety and security. Now, what about that? India's nuclear weapons are in the hands of a Hindu Taliban. Now, what about that? He is risking not only the Kashmiris, he is risking the whole region.
Right.
The region, the whole, like the peace of the whole region. And at large, they should wake up. The international
just a lighter intervention. Let's not call them Hindu Taliban. Let's call them Hindutva. They are the Hindu
that's
extremists.
another term for them.
Hindu supremacists, as we call them,
Absolutely, and
because
nobody's safe from
religion,
that kind
Hindu
of
as a
ideology.
religion, is not exactly, because there are other millions of Hindus living in Nepal, in Pakistan, in India. They're not preaching this. This is one BJP RSS.
philosophy.
This is very specific cult or that extremist group of Hindus.
And the founders of RSS were very much influenced by Hitler's philosophy.
Yeah,
by Nazi
exactly.
philosophy.
And they have murdered, Gandhi, and they take pride in killing all those leaders which are trying to protect the secular aspect of India. So for us, I think, I just intervened, just a soft intervention.
That kind of philosophy,
right.
it manifests into now, as we can see, I'm just going to go through some figures. 27,000 Kashmiri people have been tortured by Indian forces. Now, this is the most heavily militarized zone in the entire world. There's an army of about 800,000 to the 8 million or so Kashmiris over there. And the number of so-called freedom fighters there, according to one of their own ministers, is just about 350. And then you have 800,000 military trying
to
quash
control
those.
the 350 people.
Exactly. Look at the disproportionality of those numbers.
It means it's a complete lie, basically.
Exactly.
If I pick up what Dr. Rizwan was saying very rightfully, that, we just touched this idea that the safety of nuclear weapons, for instance, in real world, actually, in the West, they do have a concern, whereas they do not spell it out. But I think there would be definitely a campaign on this one, that while having this kind of people ruling India with so many nuclear weapons, it's a threat not to Pakistan, basically. It's a threat to the region, threat to the world itself. Because, if you remember, the defense minister of India threatened and opposed that the no first use. He said maybe we can go against it, or we may not comply with the no first use, this doctrine, which India, Pakistan agree on that. So I think there is a big problem, and we should highlight all the facade of which India has created. And this would be a diplomatic victory of Pakistan, that whereas we are completely highlighting everything what Kashmiris are going through, but we don't know yet, to be honest. It's such a blackout.
There's a blackout, and international observers and media groups are not allowed in there. 10,000 protesters have been shot at with pellet guns since 2016 also, and more than 11,000 Kashmiris have been arrested since 2016. Now, the state in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, a lot of the teenage boys, their families don't know where they are because they just have night raids and they make them disappear. And these are like gross violations of human rights. And now they've stopped issuing death certificates as well, so as not to be able to be proven that excessive use of force was utilized.
Or how the person died, actually.
Exactly, through torture and use of force. So it's hiding
place of death is
facts.
They don't mention what happened. So I think this demonstrates clearly that whatever situation now, it will change. India cannot hide it forever.
Yeah.
India cannot keep them the way they are keeping them now, as hostage, and detain them, 8 million people. I'm sure the day India, sort of releases them from their strict curfew, the situation will be very obvious to the world.
There are already
and we
protests,
are hoping,
which we're not allowed to see.
Yeah, and we
you
are
just see
hoping,
glimpses every now and then.
that from United Nations, especially the 2 reports were issued from Human Rights Commission in Geneva. From the first report, I was actually part of the delegation where we had the remote monitoring of Indian human rights violation. The first report came, which was initiated in 2016 and ended and presented last year. The second report also came out. We definitely would like that our government and the world government should insist on a fact-finding mission of between 4th of August to whenever they end it. There must be a fact-finding mission of the United Nations. And we also, I'm sure you're also watching, Dr. Saib, as well, that there are retired justices, the left, people from the left, and other opposition leaders and the writers, they are really putting up very big fight against this 370 and 335A, because they are fearing that other states will also be bifurcated, maybe trifurcated for that matter.
Right.
There are many other states which are worried. In Punjab, they have very big worries about the way they were treated back in 1984, and they are fearing that the retaliation would be on them because they are trying to take sides of Kashmiris, legitimately so,
Yes.
asking that Indian government has no right to keep their own citizen in this state. And also the most important thing, I would say, which I wonder why, that wherever Prime Minister Modi is going, he's not actually, he's talking about something else, which is as if everything is fine. He's talking about the investment. He's talking about giving a very rosy picture.
Exactly.
And
There's a lot of
that also
misinformation.
need to be countered from
Yes.
our side,
Right.
because we have to create a situation in diplomatic front where we really, in a real term, there should be a people sent from this country, opposition leaders, political leaders, and other leaders. I would say the retired diplomats, but I would also say the young, bright academics and leaders, because they are really, really important.
Absolutely.
Because those who have passed their lives in diplomatic field is fine, but there has to be a fresh faces.
Right. People who can make an impression.
Yeah, with the knowledge, the people who are having a diaspora living abroad, send them. They know their language.
Right.
They can go and meet congressmen and present some new material to them.
Yeah.
Use of artificial intelligence, for example, for
yes.
that matter.
Prime Minister Imran Khan said that this is going to be the time when the Kashmir issue is actually going to be solved. Because of India's arrogance, they've reached this stage where, they've brought it out to the international light about what's going on in their country. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. If you study international politics, you will find out there is always, there are some aggressor states, there are some defending states. And aggressor states, they always miscalculate. They think they will prevail and they will win in the end. And the history reveals that aggressor states always meet the dust. They always fall and they always are defeated ultimately. Germany, you see, there are many empires. You study the whole history of international politics. Once they existed, they do not exist today. Same as with the Indian today. India's leadership is thinking that they are going to annex the Kashmir forcefully and they are going to win. This is their miscalculation. And secondly, Rana Sahab just mentioned the diaspora. This is a very important point. Diaspora knows their language. I was about to highlight the same point. We have media, which is Urdu media, English media. This has limited reach out to the international community. How about the French? How about the Espanol, Spanish language? How about Russian language, Chinese language? So until this message of innocent Kashmiri reaches out to them, they may not know what is happening there. So the diaspora may play a very proactive role in this regard.
Right, facilitated by the Foreign Office.
Yes.
Another thing, international media is now, highlighting such things. The mainstream media, New York Times, Guardian, you would not see, as he rightly mentioned, before 3rd of August. Now what is happening? The whole international media is influenced by that mainstream media. They're also highlighting that. Another very smart step, setting up the Kashmir cell in the embassies. That is also going to reach out to the different missions in the overseas countries, other countries. Pakistan, if establishes the cell in the embassies and in the Foreign Office, this is going to serve the purpose of Pakistan's campaign and Pakistan's smart lobbying, that how we can put Kashmir's message internationally and how we can...
The information minister said that we have established a Kashmir media cell now, which is going to integrate all these activities.
Absolutely. And tomorrow is very crucial. The whole Pakistani nation comes out to the street. They send a message, as Prime Minister is urging all the Pakistanis that they should express their solidarity with the Kashmiri people. They come out to the street, and I'm sure tomorrow you will see on social media, on international media, they will be covering through drone cameras how the massive people are in the streets. This is one message. We are fighting our battle on a softer front. We have not taken up to the aggressive level. You know that what happened in Pulwama, again, I will refer to my previous point I made. India thought India is going to drop a payload and go back safely. What happened? We have captured their pilot, we downed their planes, and ultimately they faced embarrassment internationally. And we were so, so generous. We said, okay, we don't want, because at this time we have to address the issues of economy, other social issues, and the same is for India. The message was that we should fight against poverty, not against each other.
Exactly.
So this is how I think India should, this current leadership, once again, the same thing. Their ideology is so aggressive. They are beating people who are selling cow meat. They are fighting the campaign or building their Ayodhya Mandir now. That is the next step they are going to do now.
Also, they are actually lynching Christians, and they're very recently they have lynched and destroyed the church, also accusing them for the missionary work they are conducting, although they were just taking care of hospitals and educational institutions, as the most of the missionaries do in the developing countries. There may be very few elements, but mostly they have been there forever. I mean, we should know that the Mother Teresa was there.
Yes.
They were owning Mother
She did
Teresa.
amazing humanitarian
Yeah, they were owning Mother Teresa because she had the Nobel Prize, and they're using Taj Mahal for the Muslim heritage. All Muslim heritages are kosher for them in order to earn money or get glory, but the Muslims themselves are not acceptable to them anymore. And that is also should be a very problematic issue for the international community.
So we can safely conclude that the awareness that's been raised through Prime Minister Imran Khan, especially his tweets, because he's got about 10 million followers and a lot of them are international followers. It's not just Pakistanis. He's a renowned worldwide celebrity.
Yes.
So what he says carries weight, and I'm sure it will also in next month's UN General Assembly speech that he gives over there. Now, we've seen for the first time, you haven't heard Kashmir ever being discussed in the US Congress, but now we heard Congressman Adam Smith, who's the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. He called India's US ambassador and told him that he was continuing to monitor the situation, and he said that there are legitimate concerns about the ongoing communication blackouts, increased militarization of the region, and enforcement of curfews, he said. So, you know, this is one...
a very important committee, actually.
It is. And then you also had Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who spoke very strongly. She said, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has no right to do what he is doing to the people of Kashmir, and it is up to us to raise our voices for justice, to raise our voices for self-governance, and for no discrimination based on religion. And then there's Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, and there are a bunch of senators as well who've spoken up about this.
I think it's an important, as we said, it's a sustainable level. We have to continue. We have to go on a very offensive operation, like the real-time media campaigns, and we must not consider it's only advocacy for a small period of time. We should now capitalize on the blunder committed by Indian Prime Minister and
Absolutely.
the BJP government. We should comply with the. We are complying with international law. India is not. We should highlight that as well. It should be taken to the legal as well.
Now, there's two different issues. Also, what the Prime Minister said in his speech was that one is the human rights violations in Indian-occupied Kashmir, which Pakistan has always stood up for, and we've always given them moral, political, diplomatic support. The other is the tension between India and Pakistan. So, Dr. Rizwan, I'd like to ask you that this tension going on now, we've had again cross-border firing across the line of control. A 3-year-old child, that's an infant, literally a toddler, has been killed, and the Indian forces are doing this with impunity. And you've had delegations from the British Parliament go and visit the line of control, and they've been to Muzaffarabad and seen and heard for themselves. And a lot of people are now noticing that as well. And this is a nuclear flashpoint, as we all know, Kashmir is. And now Pakistan has also conducted the launch of the training launch of the Ghaznavi ballistic missile during all of this, which we have to do. This is part of our defense exercises. So there's also escalation of tensions. So would you like to comment about that and how difficult that scenario has become?
Oh, certainly it is a difficult scenario when you have, it is very exclusive region on the face of earth. Starting from Russia, you have North Korea, you have China, India, Pakistan, they all are nuclear powers. And on nowhere you will find UK and France are the neighbors, but they do not have hostility at this point of time. If we see India and Pakistan, it's a nuclear flashpoint because of India's aggressive policies. China and Russia are living peacefully, there is no problem. But the problem is that you were talking of LOC violations. There was a United Nations mission on this, UMNGO, United Nations Military Observing Group for India and Pakistan. So that is, if you look at that, they have reported so many violations on LOC committed by India. You were saying an infant, there are many people who are not reported by media. What is happening? And the problem is that the outside world does not know what is happening to the people living along the LOC. They are living miserable life. Their lives are at threat because they are innocent people living. They are just earning their livelihood from cattle and these farming things. How can they threaten India? They are the target of Indian bullets. The next, if you see this thing, if international media is reporting, that is not reaching out to the right people. And secondly, Pakistan's this LOC thing, Pakistan has to campaign in the neighboring world. Pakistan is always focusing on the great powers. They do carry weight, but at the same time, what about Central Asia? Central Asia is a bloc. Pakistan should focus, and Pakistan should establish so much better relationship, and especially centered on Kashmir policy against India, what India is doing, because if you look at Indian policy, it's encircling Pakistan. You look at that, they have Central Asian investments, then Afghanistan, then Iran. On the other side, of course, on the eastern border, we'll see India itself. They are encircling gradually to Pakistan. Pakistan has to neutralize such Indian aggressive policies and Indian such moves, which are just trying to so-called isolate Pakistan international community. But on the other side, India itself is getting isolated.
Right.
Now, coming back to this point again, you were talking of, Indian history. 1998, Pakistan did not initiate. India initiated and Pakistan followed suit of the nuclear weapon testing. Now, Pakistan tested this missile. And this missile is just to show India we have the capability.
Yeah.
Send this message, we are a peaceful nation, we don't
Yeah.
want to commit aggression.
And this is for
We are
deterrence.
not going to
Yeah.
war, but if you go to war, that would be a blunder on your part.
Absolutely.
So be careful for
So
that.
now we're talking about cross-border firing. There's also been cross-border firing across the western border in Afghanistan. And the Foreign Office has recently said they've asked the Kabul government to eliminate terrorist hideouts along the border. And the Foreign Office has given a very strong statement that it is not our policy to do cross-border firing towards Afghanistan, but when we are attacked, we have to retaliate. So, sir, now in the midst of this entire peace process going on in Afghanistan, where the Taliban and the United States government are having talks about troop withdrawal and the possible intra-Afghan dialogue, and Pakistan is very active in that. So, in that context, now we're having these issues as well. So, would you like to comment about that?
Yeah, please. I just want to add very brief comment on this one. It's about, Pakistan has actually managed to de-circle that encircling by engaging Iran and Central Asian states. And you must have seen that Iran may be the only country which has passed a resolution in the Majlis Shura actually to condemning censoring India and on Kashmir. On the issue of cross-border, this issue has been erupting for several years now. What happened was that during this coalition support mission there was back in 4 or 5 years back, there were 380 checkposts on the border from Afghan side. What happened was they were removed by the consent of Afghan government by the US and other ally countries. They left it open. So those terrorists crossing from Afghanistan, they would cross in, fire upon Pakistani soldiers and checkposts and return. Pakistan, on the other hand, as you know, we are doing our best to fence it on our side with our money,
Right.
to making sure that no confusion happens. At this time, at this point when almost every country, major country, United States is engaged directly in the Doha talks, but Russia and China are observers, Norway and Sweden, they are witnesses, and Pakistan has facilitated this all conversation, and it's reaching towards the final result. I think spoiling this would actually benefit no one. It exactly will not benefit the current Afghan government. So it is important that the current Afghan government of Mr. Ashraf Ghani, who came to Pakistan as well, who sent his political leaders as well to Pakistan on an informal mission, he must actually advise or command those who are involved in supporting or by any means abetting those who are crossing in or firing from there. Pakistan has to retaliate.
Yeah.
If our soldiers get hurt, our civilians, our checkposts are being destroyed, this is unfortunate, but Pakistan forces will retaliate. And the results would be sad in that way, because Pakistan does not want, as we said on principle, we do not want to initiate across the western borders any kind of confrontation.
Right.
So I think the reason is they did not devote any resources to men on their side. If they man that side or fence it, or if they don't want to fence it, at least they should have some checkpost to monitor their side. We cannot do Afghan's job. We can only protect and take care of our side of Afghanistan or Pakistan.
Yeah, so we can't control what's happening from that. And now we're expecting a regime change very soon in Afghanistan next month, maybe if there's elections coming up and everything, and they'll probably the Taliban will be coming into power because they control more than half the country as it is. And so this government is now obsolete pretty much. It's going to be on its way out. So do we expect these issues to improve between Pakistan and Afghanistan after the change in government in Afghanistan?
Well, that is a good thing if the new government comes with the new ambitions to mend ties with the Pakistan, because look, Pakistan has been the major victim of terrorism. And the terrorists coming
Yeah.
from that porous border and attacking within Pakistan and going back. There is an example like Mullah Fazlullah who escaped from this side and is still hiding somewhere in Afghanistan.
Mullah is killed now. He was killed in a drone attack.
In a drone attack.
Yes, he was already killed.
All right, thank you.
He was killed. No
so
problem.
what happens, this kind of similar, there are many militants who are coming and crossing and threatening Pakistan's peace. And Pakistan today, after losing more than 70,000 lives, still a major victim.
Yeah.
So fencing along the border is not in the interest of Pakistan, in the interest of Afghanistan as well. So this is deteriorating mutual ties between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The current government is going now having no mandate. Taliban are having dialogue with Zalmay Khalilzad, and I hope it is in the final phase. Soon we will be hearing out that what are the terms and conditions, and American forces pulling out gradually from Afghanistan. What I see personally, after that, Taliban will be a political entity, not as militants. That's a good thing. If they come and Americans, they are accepting the political entity, they have a history of ruling over Kabul, but at the same time, Pakistan, UAE and Saudi Arabia were the only countries who actually accepted or recognized the regime. Now a new government comes having the mandate from the people of Afghanistan, will not be having inimical ties with Pakistan. So that conspiracies of India, which India is doing from Afghanistan,
Yeah.
I don't think so they're going to
That's
work
good.
in the future.
And how about the threat of IS after the regime changes there and the Taliban are in power? Because we do have IS Afghanistan right now that carried out attacks recently at a wedding party also, and they've been attacking the Shia Hazara community there and all. So what if India decides to, RAW decides to work with IS then? And
No,
in order
actually,
to
RAW, by the way,
Yeah.
just let me give you its own record actually as well. Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor of India, made 12 visits to Syria and Iraq. And basically the current IS entity infrastructure you're looking at is supplied by Ajit Doval's mentors and himself. He has mentored it. They were pitched against Taliban to please the US, but unfortunately it didn't succeed. They wanted to create another battlefield within Afghanistan because the Afghan Taliban were facing US and coalition forces, Afghan government, and they are the natives. They were not foreigners. After sending Al-Qaeda away, it was Ajit Doval's plan to bring those there, and the settlers of ISIS at the moment they are the same entity, and he has done this in the past 3 years, and he made almost a dozen trips to Syria.
Right.
Yeah, and I've said it in this previously last year in the programs when there was a issue of the IS. So infrastructure, we are looking at the sponsorship, the money, the weaponry supplied to ISS is by India because they want to cut this, tailor Taliban to their size, so whenever they come to government, so they should not be hostile to India.
Right.
So this is actually whatever happening
So
there.
RAW's nefarious activities in Afghanistan,
They
they're
are-
not
they-
stopping
they-
anytime
no,
soon.
they are part of. They have been a part of this entire big scheme, and they have never hidden it. Actually, India has never hidden it. They have invested in building strategic resources, dams, roads, infrastructure, to healthcare. They send in disguise their soldiers in engineering and health facility as teachers. They have been doing it for many years. They wanted to have their entities intact when and if Ashraf Ghani's government is changed, because the government, what we are talking about, we do not know yet actually. There will be an election, presidential election on 23rd September or not. If there are election, what kind of, because there will be a combination, a composition of the government would be an amalgamation of all the political forces.
Right, okay.
So it won't be really, Taliban will not have very dominant in the
power share,
field.
yeah.
It will not happen because
Right.
they have to address the Northern Alliance, all those, Abdullah's camp, others, and groups, those who are interested in the region, like
Right.
for Russians, Iranians,
Targets.
Chinese.
Yeah.
So it will be if there is, it's a big if, because it cannot be that fast. The process of this negotiation, the final document, and then the withdrawal of the 9,000 personnel which are promised by the United States out of 21 or 24,000, this has to happen before they go into the election campaign. So this is actually the ground realities.
Okay, right. So that's unfortunately all the time we have for this program today. Thank you so much, Dr. Rizwan and Rana Saab, for joining us and giving us all your analysis and feedback on all these topics. Viewers, thank you for joining us on World Today. That's all the time we have for today's program. And we'll be seeing you next time at the same time, same place, World Today at 5 to 6 p.m. tomorrow evening, inshallah. And that's all for now. Bye-bye from Sharmeen Ali and our team at World Today.